Detective Lucas Hayes had never considered a simple grocery store theft worthy of late-night attention. He sat in the dim glow of his office, the hum of the CCTV monitors filling the silence, sipping a stale cup of coffee that had been forgotten since the afternoon. The theft had been minor, a man trying to pocket a bottle of wine, but Lucas, ever methodical, reviewed the footage anyway. That's when he saw her. A girl. Green hoodie, hood drawn low over her face, hair tangled and dark, no older than 22. She wasn't stealing anything, wasn't running, wasn't even looking at the cameras. She just stood there, in the background, as if she belonged to the shadows themselves. Lucas froze, blinking at the screen, convinced he had misread the timestamp. And then he noticed it. The man who stole the wine glanced at her, and his eyes went wide, a flicker of fear crossing his face before he bolted from the store. Lucas leaned closer, his fingers hovering over the keyboard, a mix of curiosity and unease coiling in his chest. Within hours, the man was reported missing. It was the perfect storm for obsession. Lucas had chased missing persons for over a decade, but he had never seen a pattern like this. Something about the girl's presence felt wrong, not threatening, exactly, but uncomfortably precise, like a shadow falling across someone's life just before disaster struck. He called in a favor with an old tech-savvy colleague, Julia, to comb through weeks of CCTV footage across Portland. They found her everywhere. Not always in the same part of town, not always at the same time, but she was there. At a gas station on I-5. In a locked office building downtown. Outside a quiet residential street where a man had vanished just the night before. Always alone. Always in the same green hoodie. "This is weird," Julia said, her voice tense as she scrolled through another clip. "It's like she's everywhere. But not really." Lucas didn't reply. He couldn't. A cold knot of realization had settled in his stomach. She wasn't just in the background of these scenes, she was the common denominator. By the third disappearance, Lucas's colleagues began noticing his distracted behavior. He muttered to himself, replayed the clips obsessively, and scribbled notes about green hoodies in the margins of his case files. "You're seeing ghosts, Hayes," one senior officer joked, trying to break the tension. "Or maybe just hoodies. Maybe Portland's running out of colors." Lucas didn't laugh. He couldn't. Over the next few days, he traced her through surveillance cameras from the waterfront to the outskirts of Forest Park. The girl moved with a deliberate grace, a ghost in sneakers and denim. Every time Lucas thought he might finally catch up with her, she vanished, gone before he even realized she had been there. By now, the pattern had become undeniable. Every sighting was followed by a disappearance within 24 hours. Sometimes children, sometimes adults. The police reports painted a chilling picture: loved ones suddenly missing, no signs of struggle, nothing left behind except the eerie sense that someone had been watching. Lucas found himself wandering the streets late at night, scanning alleys, park benches, and convenience stores for any trace of her. He would catch glimpses of green from the corner of his eye, only to find empty streets when he turned. Sleep became a distant memory, coffee his only companion. He tried rational explanations, copycat kidnappers, urban legends, coincidences, but nothing fit. And there it was again on the monitor that Friday night, the girl, standing outside a small diner on Hawthorne Boulevard, staring into the lens like she knew he was watching. Lucas leaned forward, heart thundering. He realized, with a cold clarity, that whatever this girl was, she was no ordinary person. And he was going to follow her, no matter how far it led him, no matter how dangerous it became. Somewhere deep in Portland, the girl in the green hoodie moved silently through the city, unaware, or perhaps fully aware, of the storm she was about to unleash. And Lucas Hayes, detective with a reputation for solving the unsolvable, knew one thing: he had just stumbled into something far bigger than a missing person. Far bigger, and far more personal, than he could have ever imagined. Detective Lucas Hayes could no longer ignore the pattern. What had started as a flicker of curiosity, a girl in a green hoodie appearing in a grocery store CCTV clip, had escalated into an all-consuming investigation that defied logic. Each night, he pored over hundreds of security feeds across Portland, meticulously logging sightings, times, and locations. There was no rhyme or reason to her movements, yet the one constant was undeniable: wherever she appeared, someone disappeared within 24 hours. Lucas's apartment had transformed into a war room of sorts. Maps of Portland covered the walls, each location marked with red pins, strings connecting them like some macabre web. CCTV screenshots of the girl, hood pulled low, eyes hidden, were pinned next to each red dot. His coworkers joked behind his back that he had lost his mind. One officer, with a half-smile, asked, "Planning to pin up every hoodie in Portland next?" Lucas didn't answer. He couldn't. The girl was not just a person, she was becoming an obsession, a riddle that gnawed at his sanity. He began noticing patterns beyond location. In some videos, she lingered near witnesses, almost studying them. In others, she appeared at private events, even inside locked buildings, where no one could possibly enter. Lucas replayed one particularly chilling clip over and over, a high-end condominium security feed showing the girl walking calmly through a locked lobby, elevator doors closing behind her as if the building itself parted to let her pass. The resident went missing the next morning. The detective's growing paranoia made him question everything. Was she supernatural? A skilled intruder? A child trained to perfection in stealth? Every theory he considered was more unsettling than the last. And yet, each clue only deepened the mystery. He noticed small recurring details, her hoodie, always green, a peculiar shade that almost seemed to glow under certain lighting. Sometimes, a glint of metal peeked from her pocket, sometimes, a small tattoo on her wrist flashed briefly, too fleeting to identify. Lucas tried to piece together a profile, reaching out to colleagues in behavioral analysis, but they only provided standard criminal profiles that did not fit. One psychologist suggested she might be a runaway or a victim of human trafficking, but the calculated nature of her appearances, the precision with which she avoided detection, contradicted every known pattern of abuse or manipulation. He could not reconcile the girl's apparent innocence with the trail of disappearances she left behind. The detective's personal life began to suffer. Calls from friends went unanswered. Even Julia, his tech-savvy colleague, expressed concern. "Lucas, you're chasing shadows," she warned. "At some point, you need to step back before it consumes you." But he couldn't. Every missing person report felt like a direct challenge, a dare only he could answer. Then came the night that changed everything. Lucas was monitoring a live feed from a convenience store in southeast Portland when he noticed her again. She was standing near the doorway, hood low, holding a bag of chips. A man came out, waved at her casually, and walked to his car. 20 minutes later, the man was reported missing. This time, Lucas began noticing something else. The people who vanished often had no apparent connection to her or to one another. Teachers, delivery drivers, office workers, all walks of life. Yet they shared one thing, brief proximity to the girl in green. Obsessed, Lucas began cross-referencing public CCTV feeds, social media check-ins, and news reports of missing persons. By now, he had a spreadsheet with dozens of sightings, each followed by a confirmed disappearance. Even city traffic cameras revealed her presence, walking alone along the waterfront, standing at intersections, crossing streets in neighborhoods she had no apparent reason to be in. One evening, while analyzing a clip from a gas station near I-205, Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. The girl looked directly into the camera, as if acknowledging him. He leaned back, gripping the edge of his desk, realizing the horrifying truth: she might know he was watching. And if she did, what was she planning next? By now, Lucas's obsession was no longer just professional, it was personal. He began to see her everywhere, reflections in shop windows, shadows darting past alleys, glimpses on streets he walked at night. He laughed nervously to himself once, muttering, "Okay, Hayes, this is officially your life now. Green hoodies, coffee, and paranoia." The pattern was clear, terrifying, and undeniable. But what was the cause? What was the reason behind these disappearances? And most importantly, was it too late to stop the next victim from vanishing? Lucas Hayes was about to discover that the girl in the green hoodie was not just a phenomenon, not just a riddle, she was something far more deliberate, far more sinister, and far closer to him than he could ever imagine. Detective Lucas Hayes' apartment had become less of a home and more of a surveillance command center. Monitors lined every wall, each displaying a live street camera feed or recent CCTV clip. Maps of Portland were covered with red pins and multicolored strings, marking her sightings and the subsequent disappearances. He barely left the apartment, surviving on coffee, takeout, and the gnawing anxiety that came from staring too long at grainy footage. Sleep had become a distant memory. The girl in the green hoodie haunted his dreams, emerging from shadows in alleys, staring from rooftops, vanishing before he could confront her. He had begun noticing small green flecks, on discarded newspapers, in the reflections of store windows, everywhere he went. It was absurd. He knew it. But the pattern was real, undeniable, and terrifying. Julia, his tech-savvy colleague, tried to intervene. "Lucas, you need a break," she said one evening as he pored over dozens of clips. "This is no longer an investigation. You're spiraling. You haven't slept for days, and you're seeing her everywhere. Even in your nightmares." "I can't," he replied, voice tight. "She's not just random. Every appearance, every disappearance, it's connected. And I'm going to figure it out before someone else goes missing." Julia shook her head but stayed, helping him cross-reference locations, timestamps, and missing person reports. She noticed a subtle escalation in the disappearances. Victims were no longer confined to isolated areas. They were people in crowded neighborhoods, under constant surveillance, yet they still vanished without a trace. Lucas began taking extreme measures. He installed a network of live street cameras near his apartment building, meticulously labeling each feed with the times she had appeared nearby. He even experimented with disguises, hoods, hats, sunglasses, to see if she would react, but the girl seemed to ignore him, appearing at her own pace, indifferent to his presence. The obsession began to seep into every aspect of his life. Meals were skipped. Friends stopped calling. Even Julia, who had become his only anchor, grew frustrated. "You're losing yourself, Lucas," she warned. "At this rate, you'll end up like them, the ones who disappeared." Lucas laughed bitterly at that. Better to chase shadows than be swallowed by them. One night, while reviewing footage from a downtown parking garage, he saw her again, moving silently past parked cars, her eyes hidden beneath the hood. He leaned in closer, straining to catch any detail, and noticed something he hadn't before, a small tattoo on her wrist, almost like a symbol, too fleeting to decipher. It sent a shiver down his spine. This was no random girl. She had purpose, and perhaps even a plan. His isolation deepened as he began following live camera feeds on foot, stalking the city in long nights that stretched into early mornings. He would check alleys, abandoned buildings, and even active crime scenes, hoping to catch her in person. Every time he came close, she vanished. Always ahead of him, always just out of reach. Humor became a coping mechanism, thin and ironic. He found himself talking to the monitors, muttering things like, "Okay, green hoodie, let's see how fast you really are," or, "If I catch you at the gas station this time, you're buying me coffee." It was absurd. And yet, for Lucas, humor kept him tethered to reality, even as his obsession isolated him further. By now, the girl's appearances were no longer merely coincidental, they were haunting. On one particularly rainy night, Lucas noticed her walking down a street near his own neighborhood. His heart leapt, not with excitement, but with a growing sense of dread. What if she knew he was watching? What if she was intentionally drawing him into something dangerous? The pattern of disappearances and sightings had begun to feel personal. Lucas realized that he wasn't just a detective anymore. He was a participant, a character in a dangerous game orchestrated by a young woman who seemed to manipulate time and space with uncanny precision. Exhausted yet unable to stop, Lucas documented everything, knowing that every detail might matter. Every blink, every movement of the girl in the green hoodie could be a clue. And deep down, he feared the inevitable, the moment he would finally confront her and discover a truth more horrifying than he could imagine. Because at this point, he understood one terrifying certainty: the girl wasn't just stalking Portland. She was stalking him. Lucas Hayes had convinced himself that the girl in the green hoodie was untouchable, an enigma who slipped through cameras and alleys as effortlessly as a shadow. But that night, fate, or perhaps something darker, decided otherwise. It was nearing midnight, the streets slick with rain from an earlier downpour, and the neon signs of Hawthorne Boulevard reflected in puddles like fractured shards of light. Lucas had been following live feeds from nearby stores, his eyes glued to monitors as he muttered calculations about her next probable location. Julia had begged him to rest, to let someone else track her for a change, but he refused. Sleep felt like surrender. and surrender had never been an option. As he rounded a corner, Lucas caught a glimpse of movement, a flash of green amidst the black asphalt. He froze. Heart pounding, he ducked behind a lamppost, watching as she walked calmly across the street, hood low, hands tucked into the front pocket of her hoodie. She wasn't running, wasn't hiding. She was walking with purpose, almost casual, as if she belonged to the shadows themselves. Lucas took a step forward, then stopped. His rational mind screamed at him to call for backup, but the obsessive part, the part that had kept him awake for nights and weeks, pushed him onward. He needed to see her up close. Needed to understand what made her so terrifyingly deliberate. He followed at a distance, careful not to be seen. She moved through the empty streets, glancing at windows, occasionally adjusting the hood as if aware of the surveillance cameras he had installed all over the neighborhood. Then, she entered a 24-hour diner. Lucas paused, heart hammering, calculating the odds. He considered calling for reinforcements, but something in her presence, the way she seemed so ordinary, yet impossibly deliberate, compelled him to continue alone. He slipped inside behind the counter, scanning the diner for any sign of her. The place was nearly empty, the hum of a refrigerator and the clink of cutlery the only sounds. And there she was, sitting in a booth near the back, facing the window. Her hood was still up, shadowing her face, but Lucas could see a flicker of motion on her wrist, a small, almost imperceptible tattoo he hadn't been able to identify on the CCTV. It sent a chill down his spine. He approached cautiously. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" She didn't turn. She didn't react. She simply sat there, still, almost serene, as though she had been expecting him all along. Lucas felt a wave of unease. Was this girl human? Or was she something beyond comprehension, a symbol of inevitability, of fate, of consequences he couldn't avoid? Then she spoke, softly, almost a whisper over the hum of the diner. "You've been watching me." Lucas swallowed hard. I need to know who you are. Why you're here. Why people are disappearing." She tilted her head slightly, studying him under the shadow of her hood. "And if you knew," she asked, "would you stop me, or join me?" Lucas froze, the words hitting him harder than he expected. There was something unsettling in her calm, deliberate tone, as if she held a power over him he couldn't comprehend. She wasn't frightened, she wasn't defensive, she was calculating, confident, and terrifyingly unafraid. He took a step closer, scanning the diner, noting exits, potential threats, anything that could give him an edge. And then he noticed the tattoo more clearly, a small geometric symbol on her inner wrist, precise and deliberate. He recognized it from sketches he had found in multiple CCTV clips, a mark present in nearly every appearance she had made. She was the same person everywhere. Always. But why? The girl in the green hoodie rose slowly, her movements fluid and deliberate. Without looking at him, she walked to the door, her figure slipping into the rainy night as silently as a whisper. Lucas followed for a moment, his instincts urging him to pursue, to finally confront her, but the streets were empty, slick with rain, and she disappeared into the shadows. He stood there for minutes, heart racing, rain soaking through his coat, realization settling like a stone in his stomach. She had been aware of him all along. Every appearance, every disappearance, every missing person, she had orchestrated it with intention. And now, Lucas Hayes understood the terrifying truth, she was not random. She was deliberate. And whatever game she was playing, he had become a part of it. As he trudged back to his apartment, water dripping from his coat and shoes squelching on the wet pavement, one thought burned in his mind: she was no ordinary girl. And she was coming back. Detective Lucas Hayes hadn't slept properly in nearly a week. His apartment reeked of stale coffee and rain-soaked clothes, but exhaustion had become a background noise, something he barely noticed anymore. The girl in the green hoodie had crossed his mind constantly, every clip, every alleyway, every news report a reminder that she was always one step ahead. And now, for the first time, Lucas had a lead that felt tangible. It began with a series of encrypted emails from an anonymous source. The subject line was simple: she isn't random. She's organized. Lucas hesitated for a moment, a flicker of rational caution urging him to ignore it. But curiosity, and obsession, won. He opened the attachments. Inside were photographs and surveillance files. Not just CCTV clips, but detailed images showing interactions between the girl and figures of influence across Portland. City council members, prominent business owners, even a few high-ranking police officers, all photographed in brief, casual encounters with her. Each image was time-stamped and meticulously documented. Lucas scrolled, disbelief growing into horror. He leaned back in his chair, trying to process the implications. This was no longer about random disappearances or a mysterious girl wandering the city. This was a network. An organized, deliberate network in which the girl was both catalyst and enforcer. Julia entered, frowning at his pale, haunted face. "Lucas, what is it?" "You need to see this," he said, handing her the laptop. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. This is insane," Julia whispered. "She's not just appearing near missing people. She's interacting with them. With these people. High-profile figures. Someone's covering for her, or she's controlling them." Lucas's jaw tightened. The implications were staggering. If these disappearances were orchestrated with the complicity, or at least the blind eye, of Portland's elite, then uncovering the truth would put him directly in the crosshairs. And worse, he realized, every move he made, every camera feed he monitored, every note he wrote, could be anticipated by someone who had been watching him all along. He went through every piece of evidence, noting a pattern. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. She appeared in areas where influential people were meeting or working. Within 24 hours of her appearance, someone connected to those people disappeared. Sometimes it was a whistleblower, a minor employee, a passerby who had seen too much. Sometimes it was someone closer, a journalist, a clerk, a lawyer. Lucas felt a cold wave of understanding. She was not just a ghost, she was a mechanism of control. Then came the most unsettling revelation. One of the emails contained a short video clip, grainy footage of the girl in a secure government building. Lucas froze. The doors she walked through were electronically locked, monitored by guards. Cameras were supposed to cover every inch. Yet there she was, moving calmly through the halls, adjusting her hoodie as if the world had been designed for her. The file's metadata suggested the clip had been taken only days ago. Lucas swallowed hard, a chill crawling up his spine. Whoever, or whatever, she was, she had access. She had influence. And if the rumors were true, her reach extended far beyond Portland. "What do we do?" Julia asked, voice trembling slightly. "If this is true, we can't go to the police. They're part of it." Lucas stared at the screen, mind racing. He thought of every disappearance, every blurred CCTV clip, every shadowy figure in a crowd. And then he realized something more terrifying. She had been aware of him all along. His obsession, his pursuit, she could anticipate it. Perhaps she even wanted him to follow her. The rain began to fall outside, streaking the windows as if Portland itself were mourning the truth. Lucas felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had come to understand one undeniable fact. Uncovering her secrets could endanger his life. But ignoring her? That was unthinkable. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. A fleeting thought crossed his mind, dark and almost incredulous. What if she wasn't just controlling disappearances? What if she was testing him, studying him, preparing him for something greater? The idea was terrifying, yet a part of him couldn't look away. For the first time, Lucas felt something more than obsession, fear laced with anticipation. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a game. And in that game, the girl in the green hoodie was not only the player but the dealer, the architect, and perhaps, the ultimate judge. By midnight, Lucas had made a decision. He couldn't wait. He couldn't watch from a distance. He needed to confront her, or at least understand the full scope of what she represented. And somewhere in Portland, the girl in the green hoodie moved through the shadows, aware that someone was following her trail, slowly drawing closer to the truth she had been orchestrating all along. Lucas Hayes was now in her world. And it was only a matter of time before that world collided with his. Detective Lucas Hayes had reached a breaking point. Days blurred into nights, coffee and exhaustion his only companions, as he monitored live feeds across Portland, tracking every flash of green he could find. He knew the girl in the green hoodie was watching, waiting, perhaps even laughing quietly at the futility of his pursuit. And yet, he refused to stop. Lucas had devised a plan, a calculated, high-risk attempt to finally confront her. He would use a decoy. By placing a live feed of himself walking down a side street near her last known location, he hoped to draw her out, to see whether she would react to a digital reflection of his presence. It was reckless, almost desperate, but Lucas knew he had little choice. Every moment he hesitated could mean another disappearance. Julia had warned him, her voice taut with fear. "Lucas, if she's as powerful, or as prepared, as you think, this could end badly. You're not dealing with a normal person. You're dealing with someone who seems to anticipate everything." "I know," Lucas replied, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "But I have to try. If I don't, I'm just prolonging this nightmare. And someone else will vanish." The plan was set. Lucas placed the decoy feed, looping a live projection of himself down a narrow street near the waterfront. He then took a separate route on foot, hidden from cameras, waiting in the shadows. Rain slicked the pavement, reflecting neon lights in fractured shards. Every step, every rustle of wind, made him tense. He felt the familiar thrill of danger, laced with an undercurrent of dread. Minutes passed. Then, through the corner of his eye, he saw her. The girl in the green hoodie appeared near the decoy feed location, moving with uncanny precision. She stopped, paused, and seemed to study the projection. Lucas's pulse quickened. She was reacting, she was alive, calculating, aware. He tried to approach, keeping to the shadows, but she slipped through the streets like a ghost. Every alleyway he attempted to block was already vacated, every street he thought he could cut her off seemed preordained for her escape. She was not only elusive, she was deliberate, anticipating his moves in ways that defied reason. Lucas cursed under his breath. How is she always one step ahead? He continued his pursuit, but with every attempt, he felt the walls closing in. The city itself seemed to conspire with her. Lights flickered, pedestrians appeared and disappeared, and rainwater pooled at intersections as though marking her path. He began to question his own senses. Was she human? Or had he crossed into something else entirely, a realm where logic no longer applied? Hours passed. Exhaustion weighed on him, muscles trembling, mind fraying at the edges. And then, finally, a break. She paused. At the corner of an abandoned warehouse, she lingered for a moment, hood low, tattoo glinting faintly under a streetlight. Lucas froze, debating whether to step out. His instincts screamed danger, yet obsession overpowered fear. "Why are you doing this?" he whispered into the night, hoping she could hear. She didn't answer. She never did. Instead, she turned, glancing back at him, or perhaps through him, and continued walking, slipping inside the warehouse. Lucas hesitated. The door was old, rusted, and half open. Every rational part of him screamed to wait, to call for backup. But he had come too far. Inside, the warehouse was dark and empty, save for the faint hum of distant machinery and the dripping of rainwater from the leaking roof. Lucas moved cautiously, the echo of his footsteps loud in the cavernous space. Then, in the shadows, he caught sight of her again. She wasn't running. She was waiting. It was a trap, or perhaps a test. Lucas's heart raced. He realized the chilling truth: she had been aware of him all along. Every move he had made, every camera feed he had monitored, every decoy he had set, it had been anticipated. The girl in the green hoodie was orchestrating the encounter. She wasn't just elusive. She was controlling the narrative. A cold wave of realization washed over him. He was no longer the hunter. He was the prey. Yet, despite the fear, a twisted sense of exhilaration surged through him. He had followed her this far. He had finally breached the boundary between observer and participant. And somewhere, deep down, he knew that the answers he sought, about her, about the disappearances, about the network she was connected to, were closer than ever. Lucas Hayes took a deep breath, stepping further into the warehouse, aware that every decision from this point forward could change everything. Somewhere in the shadows, the girl in the green hoodie was waiting. And this time, the game had escalated. Detective Lucas Hayes had learned one thing over the past weeks: the girl in the green hoodie was always ahead. She was never just a fleeting figure on a monitor or a distant silhouette in the rain. She was a force, deliberate and untouchable, capable of anticipating every move he made. And now, for the first time, that force had crossed into his own territory. It was late, nearing midnight, and the streets of Portland were quiet under a thick drizzle. Lucas had been monitoring his network of live street cameras near his apartment building, an uneasy habit he couldn't shake. The monitors flickered with the usual shadows and empty streets, until a figure appeared on the feed that made his pulse stop, a girl, green hoodie unmistakable, walking calmly toward his building. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. He had been preparing for this moment mentally for weeks, yet the reality of it brought a new kind of fear. He ran through scenarios in his head. What if she was there to kill him? What if she had some reason to make him disappear, just like the others? His hand hovered over his phone, instinctively reaching for backup, but he hesitated. Part of him knew calling for reinforcements could ruin the delicate advantage he might still have. He crouched low behind a wall near his building's entrance, watching as she moved with the same eerie calmness he had seen in every video. She didn't run. She didn't glance around nervously. She just walked, as though the city itself bent to her will. Lucas realized, with a shiver, that she was not afraid of him. She was challenging him. Testing him. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he couldn't look away. He felt a surge of obsession mixed with adrenaline, the same deadly combination that had kept him sleepless and paranoid for weeks. The rain-slicked pavement reflected her movement, green flickering like a spectral warning. As she approached the building's entrance, Lucas made a decision. He needed to know. This confrontation could not wait any longer. He moved silently, positioning himself behind a pillar near the lobby doors. His pulse was deafening in his ears, each beat echoing the thought, this could be the end. The girl stopped, just short of the entrance, and Lucas caught the first clear glimpse of her face. The hood had fallen back slightly, revealing dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed older than her apparent age, a calculated blend of innocence and menace. She wasn't just a girl. She was a puzzle. A weapon. And she knew it. Lucas exhaled slowly, trying to steady his nerves. "Why are you here?" he whispered, barely audible over the rain outside. She tilted her head slightly, as if amused. "I told you," she said softly, almost conversationally. "You've been watching. And now, you're here. What will you do?" The question struck him harder than any physical threat could. Every sighting, every disappearance, every trace of her throughout Portland had led him to this exact moment. He realized, with cold clarity, that she had orchestrated it all, not just the victims, but his own obsession, his own path. Lucas considered retreating, but curiosity and defiance overpowered fear. "I'm not leaving until I understand," he said firmly. "Tell me what this is. Why the disappearances? Who are you really?" The girl's expression remained unreadable. She took a single step closer, and Lucas instinctively mirrored it, feeling the invisible tension stretch between them. "Do you really think it's that simple?" she asked. "Do you think anyone can explain it in words?" A fleeting smirk touched her lips, and Lucas noticed something he hadn't before, a small, intricate tattoo on her inner wrist, the same symbol he had seen in CCTV clips, on her every appearance. It wasn't just a mark. It was a signature. She stopped, just outside the building's automatic doors. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of Portland as silently as she had arrived. Lucas stood frozen, rain dripping from his hair and coat, mind racing. He realized something terrifying. She had come to him deliberately. And she had left the choice in his hands, to pursue her further or retreat, knowing the danger that awaited him. For the first time, Lucas Hayes felt truly exposed, vulnerable, and aware that the obsession that had consumed him was no longer a game. It had become real, personal, and far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Somewhere in the city, the girl in the green hoodie was already planning her next move, and he knew, with a sinking certainty, that the endgame was approaching. Detective Lucas Hayes had been chasing shadows for weeks, but now the shadow had become flesh, purpose, and terrifying reality. The girl in the green hoodie had infiltrated his world, and the invisible line between hunter and hunted had dissolved entirely. For the first time, he understood the stakes. This was no longer a case. This was a reckoning. It began the morning after he had spotted her approaching his apartment. Lucas couldn't sleep. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind, every distant footstep made him flinch. He reviewed CCTV footage obsessively, noting patterns he had previously missed, connecting dots that had seemed irrelevant before. Then, an idea struck him, a desperate, reckless plan to finally confront her directly. He traced the girl to an abandoned warehouse near the Willamette River, a place she had visited before in previous sightings. Lucas approached cautiously, aware that every step could be anticipated. Inside, the warehouse was dark and cavernous, the faint echo of dripping water marking the silence. His flashlight cut through shadows, revealing crates, abandoned equipment, and footprints in the dust. Then, he saw her. Not running, not hiding, standing calmly in the center of the warehouse, hood down. Her face was fully visible for the first time, revealing a woman, not a girl. She looked older than the 20-something he had assumed, her features sharp, confident, and deliberate. She wasn't frightened, she was in control. "Lucas Hayes," she said, her voice low, steady, and unmistakably commanding. "I've been expecting you." Lucas's heart pounded. "Who are you? Why all this? The disappearances, what is happening here?" She smiled faintly, almost ruefully. "You think this is about random disappearances? About chaos? No. This is about control. Exposure. Justice." He frowned, disbelief and confusion warring in his mind. "Justice? You've terrorized people, made them vanish, how is that justice?" She stepped closer, revealing the small tattoo on her wrist, the symbol Lucas had traced across Portland. Justice isn't always neat. Sometimes it requires sacrifice. Sometimes it requires exposing corruption where the law has failed. Every disappearance, every sighting, it has been calculated to protect secrets the city wants buried. Powerful people, influential figures, they aren't gone. Not entirely. They're being watched. Controlled. Held accountable. Lucas felt a chill settle in his chest. He had suspected a network, yes, but this revelation was bigger, more morally complex, and scandalous beyond comprehension. The girl, the woman, was orchestrating disappearances not to harm, but to expose the hidden crimes of Portland's elite. "You mean, the disappearances were staged?" Lucas asked cautiously, still unsure what he was seeing. She nodded. "Not all of them. Some were warnings. Some were necessary to protect others. But yes, I have been orchestrating events. And you've been part of the design all along. Watching, documenting, following, exactly what I intended." Lucas's mind raced. Every obsession, every sleepless night, every risk he had taken, it had all been anticipated. "Why me?" "Because," she said simply, "you have the mind for it. The obsession. The drive. You could either expose the truth, or disappear, like the rest." She paused, her eyes locking onto his. "The choice is yours." For the first time, Lucas hesitated. His moral compass, his instincts as a detective, screamed to arrest her. But part of him understood the scale of what she had done, the corruption she had revealed, the lives she had protected, the justice she had enforced in shadows where the law had failed. The warehouse seemed to close around him, the sound of dripping water echoing like a countdown. Outside, Portland's streets carried on, oblivious to the revelation unfolding in the darkness. Lucas made his choice. He lowered his flashlight slightly, meeting her gaze. "I need to know everything," he said quietly. "Every detail. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to understand." She smiled faintly, and for the first time, Lucas felt a strange relief. Not fear. Not obsession. Understanding. She extended her hand, a gesture both literal and symbolic. "Then come closer," she said. "It's time you learned the truth." As he stepped forward, the lines between right and wrong, predator and prey, obsession and purpose, blurred. Lucas Hayes, detective of missing persons, had become part of a larger, morally ambiguous design, one that would leave Portland forever changed, and its citizens questioning how far justice could stretch in the shadows. The girl in the green hoodie, no, the woman, was no longer a mystery. She was the architect of chaos and order, justice and fear, and Lucas had willingly stepped into her world. Somewhere in Portland, life carried on unaware, yet the city itself had shifted. One woman in green had rewritten the rules. And those who had once vanished might never truly be the same again. Lucas Hayes exhaled, the weight of understanding heavy but oddly liberating. He had found her. And now, for better or worse, he was a part of the truth.